Welcome to the Lightforge. This is Adwictum.
This is Merps. Hello. It's March, which is surprising. It feels like time has passed by very quickly, but not in many ways.
Time has passed by this year very quickly. It felt like it was like super freaking slow through the end of like 2020, and then like 2021 came and it's just been like blowing by.
Yeah, some ways, yes. Some ways, no. There's lots of things I'm looking forward to in 2021, such that I want 2021 to go by faster. For example, Diablo 2 Resurrected, which we've talked about before. There's a lot of other games that are upcoming as well. Pokemon's 25th anniversary special sets are coming out later this year. We have Pokemon Snap coming out at the end of April.
By the
You're
way,
getting that too, right?
Brand New's reaction was, "I will not let you pay $60 for that crappy game," and she loved Pokemon. And my reaction is, "Oh, you didn't know? We already paid for it. Like this is a done deal. As soon as they announced it, this was like never in question."
What is up with you guys? It's like she won't let you get a $60 game. You won't let her get like the new Eevee Heroes a card set.
I did not tell her I didn't let her. Okay. I'm not saying she can't get the new EV set, whatever Pokemon card box. I'm saying she should not buy a box of Pokemon cards to open them all because she doesn't actually want all of them. I'm saying she should get a box, open up some of them, and sell the rest of them because she likes making profits off things, even if it's very small profits. Today, we got some like West Elm chairs that like MSRP for like over $250, and we got two of them for $150 that are in like pretty much new condition. They bought it and they ended up like not using it, and then we picked them up, and she was like super happy about it, right? Because it was like such a good deal. Like I haven't seen her this happy in a bit. It's like Christmas for her to have something like this happen and like save like $300. So I'm like, why are you gonna spend $100 on Pokemon cards? You don't even like want most of it.
Okay, that's fair. The way that she framed it, it was as though you were the evil troll preventing her from getting
of course.
Of this stuff. Of course,
that's our relationship.
So really, what you're saying, optimal enjoyment for her is to get the box, keep it sealed, never open it, think about all of the future profits that she'll get from keeping it sealed, and then go on eBay and buy singles that she wants.
Oh no, I would have her open the box, open up a few packs, and then sell the other packs and make the profit back that way. Because you can just like open.
But you won't.
You won't?
No. You got to keep the box sealed. You got to like.
Well, the numbers that she was giving me made it seem like you could make a profit that way. Because
where's she getting numbers from?
She was getting like $6 packs. She's like $6 a pack and like $110 a box for 60 packs. I'm like, I could do the math on this. Shipping's not that expensive. If you just sell packs in bulks of like, at least like 5, you'll just make your money back and you can open up quite a few.
People are not buying from her.
Okay.
Also, they're not. These are deceptive numbers. She's a trickster.
I mean, I don't really trust her numbers, but as a number, I work with whatever I am given, right? Like, I will not challenge your premises. I will just logic you to the end result using your own premises that I don't need to challenge.
Well, look, if she wants optimal profits from this, it's whatever premium sealed products you buy, you keep it sealed forever. That seal is worth so much.
But she also wants some EV cards. I think that's the thing. So it's got to be like some mix of both. But she doesn't want to pay $7 for a pack.
Does she want to gamble? That's just
it's very questionable because she'll want to gamble, but then she'll feel really bad when she loses, and it's very likely to lose. So I feel like she thinks she wants to gamble, but she doesn't really want to gamble. She wants to gamble like what happened after the Lightforge podcast recording the other day when she opened up one freaking pack of the McDonald's stuff and got a holographic Pikachu. That clip is on Twitch, by the way, if you guys want to, if you guys care enough to check it out.
By gambling, you mean getting the best result by gambling, quote unquote.
Yes, getting the absolute best result.
Only
high rolls. That's how she likes gambling. And because her last gamble was so successful, the next gamble is going to be crushing to her. So I don't really want to see it happen. She's not like we can gamble and do whatever, and we play a lot of Arena and Hearthstone and stuff like that.
I do gamble a lot. when it comes to Pokemon.
And it's like, we could lose like a lot of money, and it's like, oh man, that sucks, right? Like we have a whole run derailed in Arena, and we're like, well, that's like bad RNG, screw RNG, but we don't like feel like shit, right? Like I think a lot of people would like internalize stuff that's completely outside of their control in a gambling environment and feel really bad with gambling. So I don't know. Point is, I am completely ignoring her and getting Pokemon Snap, obviously, and so should
Obviously.
all of you. Literally, all of you that can afford to drop $60 on a Switch game should do it.
Yeah. I don't understand people who are like, well, it can't be worth it or anything. I don't know. Like, how many hours of enjoyment are you planning to get out of it? How much do you pay for entertainment for like movie or whatever? I know I'm going to be playing it for at least like 15 hours or so.
Oh, bare minimum.
Yeah, and I'm using the bare minimum,
yeah.
Right? And I want to go back, take better pictures, right? Explore, like chuck gas bombs at every Pokemon.
I did promise her something. I did promise her that this game has to get rated at least at 8.0 or above on both audience score and critic score on Metacritic for me to get it. But also, if this game is so bad that it does not get an 8.0 as a Nintendo product, like, I don't know. It would be very, very bad for that to happen. Like, I feel like there's enough hype that it'll have to be above 8.0.
I don't see how that would happen. But then again, it's like if you ask people if they thought Warcraft 3 Reforged could possibly be that bad.
But that's because that was actually that bad, right? Like if Pokemon Snap was actually that bad, yeah, I guess I don't want to drop $60 on it. But I'm just saying if it's like even like moderately doing what it's supposed to do, right? And it's not knocking it out of the park, I still want to play it for $60.
Right. Oh yeah, it's nothing to do with the scores. I just don't think people envisioned any scenario where it was possible for Warcraft 3 Reforged to suck. They were just like, because dude,
we already know the game, like
yeah. And that's true. It's just a risk, and they messed it up completely. Like, so completely.
Okay, well, we'll talk about other games at the end of the podcast. A question from the GOAT. Let's get back to Hearthstone right now. We did a whole core set analysis, kind of like just telling you what we think you need to know about this core set coming up and our thoughts on it. And we've just spoilers if you haven't watched our last Lightforge. It was like, I don't know, 2.5 hours long. Go watch it, go listen to it. And we were very positive about it. I think we're both very much looking forward to the core set and how it'll impact the arena, and also new core sets going forward. When they update it next year and stuff. But it was a lot of arena talk. So today we are going to have a hopefully short Lightforge podcast, but we're going to focus on Battlegrounds because we did not talk that much about the Battlegrounds meta when it changed because the core set really kind of took all the news. And now we've had a lot of time in this meta, and I have been playing ladder again, playing ranked matches again in Battlegrounds.
Wow.
Getting my good results. I estimate my internal MMR is around 11k, 11.5k. I thought it was around 12k. Merps is like, no way. I'm like, oh, but I faced Victor. And Merps is like, everyone faces Victor. 9k players face Victor. I'm like, okay, well,
9k players do face Victor.
I'm obviously not 9k. I was 10k like 7 months ago when I stopped playing.
I'm not saying that you are 9k. I'm just saying that we can't use you facing Victor as an example because I'm in Victor's channel, and then there will be people in chat who are just like, "Oh, I'm in your game." Like I'm not, I'm 9.3k or something like that.
Okay.
So we have evidence, and it's just because like they don't want you to wait forever.
Yeah.
So
I mean that's true.
They pull. Yeah,
but it means that my pool of people is generally the top, right? Like that's why that's my whole point. I'm kind of like in the meta.
You are not 7k.
Yeah, I'm in the top meta, right? I'm not, regardless of what my score actually, internal MMR actually is. I'm in the same types of games that you need to be in to perform well in. So that's really all I want to do, unless I'm actually like ranking up, which I feel like there's going to be a reset that happens before I get anywhere in my actual ratings. But yeah, anyway. Also, I completely destroyed Victor. Totally wrecked him. He got 8th place. You know, I hit him for a lot, even though I leveled against him. Tried my best to not, but something was happening with him in that game. I think he went for something or something, and it just did not work out. Like just a super weak mid game that crushed him.
Wow, he tried to go for first.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. I try not to go for first. If you guys remember my Battlegrounds stuff from last summer, before I kind of like quit Battlegrounds for a bit, I try not to go for first, and I'm carrying the same philosophy into this meta. And this meta is very friendly to that philosophy. Like, I'm not going to say that's a great philosophy for prior metas that I haven't been in, but in this meta, it's working. Like, I'm getting very consistent second and third places. Which averages out to this like really high mark, and I'm rarely getting first. And I don't try to get first, and I am not even close to getting first. Like when I say I rarely get first, I don't mean like, oh, I just don't end up there. I'm saying like first place crushes me, right? Like absolutely dominates me. I have like 1 or 2% chance to win, like, you know, and I'm happy about it. Like that's what I mean by I'm not getting first. I don't mean like, oh, I happen to not get first, but like I'm kind of in it. Like, no, my build ends at a certain point. And with a little luck and with a little planning and with a little skill, I don't know how much skill, I'm still not finishing. Like, I don't know what's going on, right? Like, I don't really know what the elementals do, and I'm playing a lot of elementals, which we'll talk about in a bit. But I just really don't know what all the cards do. Definitely don't know what all the heroes do. Scouting will be useless for me anyway, so I still don't scout. And yeah, it's just getting good results, right? Like, and that's and pretty consistent good results. Where you're just like you feel like your power level is going to get you somewhere between like second and fifth, and you know, you try to nudge it closer to the second place than the fifth place, but ultimately it doesn't matter that much because it means you're climbing, right? And as long as you're climbing, even if you're climbing by a little, you're good until the MMR starts crushing you and you get really high, right? And then you have to have like 3.5 place average or third place in order to like keep climbing. At which point this strategy like totally breaks down and will never work. But until you get to that place, which is really high, this is like the play for fifth strategy is very good, I think, and it definitely works in this meta. Is kind of my point. And not just when you're like Cthulhu, right? Which is kind of a free game. But just there's a lot of heroes that are fairly normal and they do whatever. Like the meta's pretty tempo heavy. There's enough people going for first stupidly that will ensure that you can get second to fifth. Like a lot of things have to kind of coincide for it to be a very safe strategy rather than. And I just don't think people have picked up on it. Like there's so many people still going for first. Like
those foolish idiots.
I mean, they are because like one of them gets it, you know, and the other like 3 that are going for first are like 8th, 7th, and like 4th. It's terrible. Whereas if you just go for like second to fifth, you're gonna get like third on average or something, which is really really good. But yeah, just wanted to kind of provide a big picture update. On the more narrow side, like on the more detailed side, I have been using elementals somewhat frequently, and I don't know how to use elementals. I quit before elementals were in the game, and so this is the first time I've played like many games together with elementals rather than just like Merps kind of like guiding me along and being like, this is what this elemental does. And I suck with them. Like I don't know what I'm doing at all, and I think maybe my end game could be a lot better, or maybe it can't. Because every time I get to the end game, I'm just dead anyway. So it's like, I don't know if it's a different, like, I could have upped my odds from 2% chance to win to 4% chance to win, or even like 8% chance to win, right? Like, I don't know. But it's not a huge difference. The interesting part about elementals, and elementals, by the way, on HS Replay, does not performing well. They are middle of the pack, you know, they're not terrible, but they're just whatever. But
yeah,
they work really well if you're just trying to get fifth, actually. Because they kick in like earlier than everything else in terms of like their synergies. Like nothing kicks in as early as elementals outside of like demons. Tier 2, you're already set up, right? If you're going the mid-game elementals. and you can just kind of continue down that path, and you will have a very, very strong mid game. Very, very, very strong mid game.
So the question is, when you say elementals, what elementals are you talking about? Like what?
Yeah, there's that yellow dude that is a 3/2 on tier 2 and gives +1/+1 to like your stuff when you play elementals, like to one of
Talking
your
about
elementals.
party
Yeah,
elementals.
that dude.
We're talking
Um,
about party elemental scaling.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And then there's the is it rock elemental, the 2/4 taunt?
Yeah, we're talking
Yeah,
about party rock.
party rock. Yeah. So those guys are on tier 2, right? And they are the only scaling units that are available on tier 2. That's just kind of a fact, right? Like you have other temporarily scaling units, like you have Hyena that comes in earlier, you have like the Dragon, whatever, but they don't really scale, right? They're not permanent. They're not going to last you to like the actual mid game.
Right,
You can use them
right.
temporarily, and then you kind of switch into whatever. But these guys, they're permanent, right? So they don't just last you to the mid game; they last you to the late mid game, and then they suck at a certain point, right? Like they get totally outscaled by like whatever other stuff,
Yes,
and
they do.
yeah, which is the point. Like you're not going for first. And of course, you're trying to get higher and trying to get some of the better elementals, but it doesn't really matter too much if you get the better elementals or not. It'll obviously like be helpful, but you don't truly need them. And obviously, you can also switch out of elementals if you get other good stuff, like a mech comp goes your way, you find a mama bear, whatever, right? Like if you get a good chance to exit this like bad elemental strategy, obviously do it if you have an endgame in mind. But if you just miss all your endgame stuff, which is what usually happens, because how do you get to an endgame, right? For beasts, you kind of need mama. Like the beasts don't work without mama these days. Um, what other things are there? Like for dragons, you need Caligos, right? Like you have these like very singular points that make your comp work, and if you miss on them, and you will most likely miss on them, that's the key. It's not like, oh, I'll sometimes miss on them and I'll use your strategy Adwick to no. If you just like don't fully commit to going for something to like scales, you will miss a large percentage of times. So like I'll switch off my strat if I get like a brand, right, or a light fang, or one of those comp makers. But in my experience, at least, the vast majority of times, you do not end up with one of those, and that's why everybody else who's trying to go for first ends up seventh and eighth and fourth, and that's where you don't fail because you're not going as hard for that terrible result. And instead, you stick with what Merps is calling party rock. I like it. And you guarantee your mid game. You guarantee your mid game, which is I think more secure than mechs these days. Like I honestly think the party rock strategy for mid game is better than the mechs in terms of how well it'll protect your health pool in the mid game. Mechs obviously are going to scale a bit better to the end game, but still not good. But Party Rock is even better at doing what mechs used to be the best at doing. And the problem with demons, which I haven't played much of, but demons always hurt you. So yeah, you're preventing damage, but you're also taking damage. So it's kind of like iffy. You're always like playing a little bit of a risky game, even if you're very powerful tempo wise. So anyway, I'm just setting it out there. Don't be afraid to just like do something with no end game, right? And if you find end game, good for you. Start transitioning, start doing stuff, and you'll be okay. I'm not saying like just ignore all the possible end games in this game, but if you just generally go for tempo and then build out some mechs, build out some like little synergies in the mid game, get some elementals going. Like you're gonna get fifth in this meta. You're just gonna get fifth at least, and then if things work out, or if you have a lot of greedy people in your lobby, you're gonna get second. And things don't even have to work out that well for second. Like I get second with like crap comps. I think chat's constantly surprised when I get second because one of the reasons is because I generally like past a certain turn, I hang about 1 or 2 mana every turn.
Mm.
And that's apparently supposed to be really bad for your chances at winning. But it just honestly doesn't matter at that point, right? Because your strategy is like kind of making up for the fact that you're not executing well. Because your strategy is taking advantage of the fact that you don't want to get first, right? So you have like a big buffer that other people don't because they're like spending resources, tearing up and like rolling and like I don't know whatever people do to try to get first.
Yep. That's gold efficiency. That'll bring you closer to first place. That's not what we're about.
Yeah. I'm not saying don't be gold efficient. I'm just saying it doesn't matter as much as you think it does for second place. I can't. No comments on first place, right? The whole point of the strategy is to not get first place. But yeah, and you don't really need to scout much either. You can obviously get more efficiencies by scouting, but it's like I said, right? Like none of this efficiency stuff matters. Like these micro efficiency stuff, none of that matters that much if you have your macro strategy down, and if most of the player base is playing the meta role, which is what's happening right now.
I find it surprising that you're talking a lot about Party Rock and not about the taunt comp, which is really like.
Oh yeah, I like the taunt. Yeah, I mean the taunt. Yeah. The thing with the taunt comp is I don't actually think it's as good as Party Rock at the late mid game. It's good at the early mid game, and then it'll anchor you for a little bit, but it doesn't go like you can't go places from it, right? Because with elementals, you can at least change into Menagerie, right? If you hit a Lightfang or a Brand at the right time, you can do better elemental stuff if you hit one of your elemental stuff. With like Taunt, you have to do a harder switch. And the payoff for those taunt minions, like obviously if you get the one insane minion on tier 3, I forget what it's called, the one that gives permanent buffs to taunt, like when a taunt is attacking, it's permanent buff.
Arm of the Empire.
Yeah, Arm of the Empire. Obviously, if you get that, you take it, but like you don't need to build a whole kind of like comp around it because you don't naturally get that much benefit out of it. Like it's a really good tempo unit, but you don't get like a comp out of it, right? You still have to build a taunt comp, and that involves some resources, whereas you could just be building an elemental comp, and that'll get you actually more like not just more flexibility in order to like potentially get second rather than fifth, but also just give you more stats in the mid game, in the late mid game.
So your analysis that like I do agree that elementals, if you're going any sort of elementals, it is easier to transition into Menagerie because you have the tribe there already. I disagree though in terms of the relative strength of the two, I guess, strategies in the mid game and late mid game. The taunt comps just are so powerful at that point, and they hit so hard.
Yeah, in the mid game, not the late mid game. Like
yeah, the late mid game too. Especially once you introduce to Karaji, nothing is more powerful. Like that is their apex. The late mid game with the arms having already buffed up, and once you introduce like one or maybe two,
you have to get like arms though. Like we're talking a huge difference in how easy these comps are able to be pulled off. Right, I'm talking about 2 tier 2 units. You're talking about one specific tier 3 unit that then needs to hit a specific like tier 4 or 5 unit. Like
it's one tier 4 unit.
Yeah, but so that's one specific tier 3 unit, one specific tier 4 unit.
Is just like spread out through the rest of the game.
Yeah, then the other stuff is just taunts. Like I don't disagree that it is a very powerful mid-game build, but I think it's hard to get to it. Like if it happens, go for it.
It's so easy to get to it. Now, once again, you shouldn't be forcing anything, right? It's like if you don't get the elementals, you're not rolling for elementals. Right. If you don't get the taunt, you don't kind of you don't force it. But for example, I Shady, who has been playing a lot of BGs, he was basically just forcing taunt comps for a while, and the consistency of it was scary. Like he was just leaning hard towards it's like, okay, we're going taunt comp, and he was going taunt comp probably, I don't know, like 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4 out like every one of his games. He was leaning that hard into it.
He
And
can
it
get
was
an
that kind of
arm 2 out of 3 of his games at
yeah.
a
Mhm.
reasonable like time in the game.
Mhm. And what he'll do is he'll like even on tier 2, he will prioritize getting like, for example, the 2/2 taunt reborn,
Yep.
acolyte. Yeah, it's one of those things where,
Tier
for
one.
example, like it's like when you are going for a specific thing. It's like when I'm leading Murlocs, right? Like many metas before, when I'm leading Murlocs, I will prioritize like a 2/3 Murloc over perhaps like a
Yep.
decent tier 2 unit. Yeah, so this is just the stuff that Shady was doing when he was experimenting, when he was going for the taunt comps, and it was working. Like it
I
was
that
working really well.
statistic can't possibly be right. That's like saying if you tried to go for a mech comp, you will get your Deflecto 2 out of 3 runs. That's not right because it's just one unit.
Yeah, it is just one
You
unit.
can get a Deflecto 2 out of 3 times when you try.
He never goes above tier 4, by the way.
Right. But
Like
like, what I mean is at a reasonable time. I don't mean like he'll
yeah,
eventually
at a
find one.
reasonable
Yeah.
time.
Oh man, can you do that with Deflecto? That doesn't work for
I
me when I try to do it with Deflecto because I
Well,
like
the problem with trying to do that with Deflecto is here's the thing. Deflecto, you need the refreshes, but like and then it's sort of still RNG. Like you getting Deflecto doesn't immediately boost your power up significantly. You getting an arm while favoring taunts beforehand
yeah,
immediately boosts your power.
sure, but it doesn't change the percent chance that you get offered a Deflecto or an Arm of the Empire, right? That's the
Sure,
same.
but then you're not like kind of rolling as hard for it, like Shady was doing. Like, have you ever super tried to get Deflecto? In
What
which
do you mean
case,
by super hard rolling for it? Like, what do you mean by that? I don't super hard roll for anything. So what do you mean by
right,
super
right.
hard roll for Arm of the
That's the
Empire?
thing. So you've never tried it to Shady's extent to try to get something. Like he was actually trying to go for
Like
taunt comp.
just like on what on like 9 mana, just roll and not buy anything
Yeah, he
besides.
would just roll for whatever stuff that quote helped him, right? Like it wouldn't just be like arm or bust. It would just be stuff that helps him. But a lot of the time, because he's already so far down the road, it would just be like, um, taunt comp stuff. And he would taunt other things. He would try to get some divine shields, maybe a
Right, but I
bulwark
do
because he had
that
like
with mechs all the time. I do that with mechs all the time. Like you get to tier 4 and then you just like roll, right?
Mhm.
Like that's just how you play mechs. So if you're saying like you start rolling for only things that help you, not like just like keep rolling until you get an arm, right? But like you roll for anything that helps your comp. In when you're like standing on tier 4 on 9 mana, and then all the turns after that. Yeah, that I do that. Like anybody who plays mechs, that's what you do. It's 2 out of 3 times. That does not feel like that's not how Deflecto feels to me.
He had a span of quite a few streams where the madman, he just wanted to see how far he could take taunt comps. So he was just like playing taunt comps the entire time.
If
He
you
was
can
climbing too.
get a arm, or just one arm of the Empire by your 10 mana turn 2/3 of the time. If you could just get one of them while buying other tempo e stuff to make sure you're not like losing health in the meantime, then yeah, that's a hugely powerful strategy. But I can say the same about mechs, and it doesn't like at least in my experience. I don't know,
Uh,
but like
you just having one deflectos, like that impact is so much smaller than you having one arm.
okay, fair, but I mean the percent chance is what I'm saying. Right? You keep focusing on the power and like how whatever. I'm just focusing on the fact that apparently 2/3 of the time you can get an arm of the Empire, which I find that really hard to believe. I haven't done the math on it.
I don't. I mean, I'm just going by what I've seen, and also I can also check in with Shady. We can ask him, but he's a big believer in it as well, and
Okay.
he was climbing while forcing taunt comp. And also, I'm just thinking about like how many deflectos I pass.
Yeah.
I don't. I pass a lot of deflectos.
By 10 mana?
Yeah, Like, I don't always pass. Like, I'll either buy it or I'll pass it,
Right,
right?
right.
Uh, because those are the options in BGs. But yeah, like it's not that hard, and a lot of people are buying Deflectos, right?
Okay. I mean, I see a Deflecto if I have like mechs available in my shop by the end of my 10 mana turn, which I'm usually on. I usually go to tier 4 on 9 mana, and then stay on tier 4 for 10 mana. I usually see a Deflecto less than 1/3 of the time. Just playing normally, like I'm not like hard rolling for a Deflecto or anything like that. I'm just rolling, upgrading my tempo. Playing like a normal kind of like tempo game, maybe with a thumb on the scale for possible little doubles. So that's a like 2/3 of the time. That's a hugely different experience than I had with Deflecto. I admittedly haven't been like looking out for Arm of the Empire, but I've probably taken Arm of the Empire very few times, and I would always take Arm of the Empire if I got if it showed up in the shop on tier 3, and I would take it probably almost all of the time on tier 4, just given my strategy. And I haven't seen it. So I may be just low rolling Arm of the Empire. I may be seeing it, but not registering that I see it, right? And like rolling past it. But
I will actually say there was the rare occasion when I popped into your stream and you passed up an arm, and I was wondering why you did it. I was like, oh, that seemed pretty decent for his setup.
yeah,
And I
it may
think
not
chat
have registered.
out. Yeah, I think it's just one of those things where like uh you're not used to having that thing being like, oh my god, right?
Right.
It's
But
not like the Amalgam.
Deflecto, like I keep going back to Deflecto, it's one unit. All one unit offering rates are the same in Battlegrounds for the tier. There is no difference except other people who happen to be taking Deflectos. So is the fact that other people, however many Deflectos get taken in a normal like Battlegrounds run, is that what's changing the odds so hard? Whereas people don't take Arm of the Empire apparently.
People do take arm, but I would say that people take Deflectos more. Like Deflecto is it is just the tier 3 unit, right? Except for Bronze Warden, but I would say Deflecto people take even like probably take even more.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I mean, if the numbers are 2/3 or above, like by the end of your 10 mana turn to get an Arm of the Empire, then like yeah, taunt comps are ridiculous. Then if that's and then any kind of anchor is pretty ridiculous.
Taunt
Um,
comps are ridiculous right now, and it's part of the reason why some people, well, I'm one of them, don't super enjoy the meta. It's fine. It obviously is still skill testing and everything, but it's a vastly different flavor than other metas that we have seen, and especially the meta that we all came out of, which was one of the wackiest and craziest. And a lot of people didn't like that. I found it to be okay,
I see
but
very few taunt comps in the meta, like just other people doing taunt comps, like very few. Um, Even in the mid game and whatever, like they may have like any kind of comp with like at bare minimum, right? Like 3 taunts, including at least one synergy for a taunt thing. I just see it so infrequently.
hmm.
Like, so I'm not saying how powerful it is, right? But people aren't doing it.
I think part of the reason is also because it sucks and it's boring. But yeah, people, um, it's one of those things where like I think people will lean away from it a little bit for whoever wants to actually have some fun, because it is just so blah. Um, it definitely doesn't trigger the same dopamine effect that a lot of other strategies and tribes do in BGs.
Yeah. But yeah, like I'm talking about like in terms of how the meta is shaping up, like taunt comps are not having a significant effect, or like maybe significant but not like a overwhelming effect on the meta. Like they are part of the meta. You do see them. They're not like, oh my god, that's a taunt comp. But they're not like hugely impacting
Well,
where the meta
they
is
definitely
going.
don't win, but I would say their impact is definitely felt. but they definitely don't win. Like they these are not comps that win the game. But I would say very importantly, arms and Karajis and just these taunts, especially in the mid and late mid game,
Mm-hmm.
they deal damage. Like they deal a decent amount of damage, especially because these comps put the Karajis last, and those things don't
Yeah.
die. Cause so all of these taunt things, they buff everything else, and then they have maybe they've tripled into like a Void Lord, and Void Lord plus Karaji is just like so much freaking stats. And then they're chunking you for like 12 to 15 damage at that point. So they serve this very important uh, purpose in the meta. Like, it's like this ecosystem thing, right? It's like they're
Mm-hmm.
definitely not the apex predators, but they keep everything in check so that the circle of life goes on. Although, yeah, like I said, many people find them vastly annoying.
Okay. I mean, I have not had any trouble with them. Like my elemental comps have always beat any mech comps, any taunt comps that I've come up against in the mid game.
Hard
Uh,
rocking.
yeah. I don't know. Maybe I've just gotten lucky. But I also really haven't faced a lot of them, so it's not like a large sample size.
I think people are moving away from it a little bit just because people do not like playing them. Like they really don't. I haven't seen this sort of a visceral reaction to a comp in a while. People got pissed with the demon meta, but at that point, BGs were still pretty new as well. At this point, I think people just really don't enjoy taunt comps. People rage at it quite a lot.
I rage at whatever that Khadgar comp is that summons a bunch of pirates that pop up and then it's infinite. Like
Camp comps.
it's just silly. Like I can't look when I first saw it because I hadn't been in the meta in months. When I first saw it, I was like, wait, this is a bug, right? Are they fixing it? And it's apparently been around for a long time, and I just didn't know what it was doing. And oh my god, talk about not fun. That is like the least fun possible comp to
See,
face against, and it sucks up all of your time.
it sucks up all of your time. It's very troll, right? It's like it's the most troll comp, which means that some people really enjoy it.
Yeah, but I mean to face against it, right?
Oh
That's
yeah,
what
of
we're
course.
talking
Facing
about.
against it sucks. And a lot of times it's about like a stupid 50-50 on who
Yep, on whether it
or
triggers or
like
not.
right, whether it triggers, were you able to find a zap? Like because sometimes zap are good. And one of the most annoying things is that because the Khadgar, Baron, Scallywag kind of interactions are very not intuitive, you have to learn the specialized rules that go along with it, which
It's
means
just Khadgar. Like Khadgar's always been problematic, will always be problematic. People will always come up with things you can do with Khadgar that are problematic and bad and not fun for everyone else. Like it's way past time to get Khadgar out of this game.
I
Way, way,
agree.
way past time.
I think we need something. Yeah, like they could design something within BGs to sort of emulate, or just like say that something will summon double, right? And then it won't work with other things. Like right now, the interactions are too messy, and it creates design problems.
It breaks
It's
the
just not.
game. I don't mean that it's necessarily OP, but it breaks the game. Like, why would you
Yeah,
have something in there that breaks the game? It's like, yeah, it's just a terrible design decision from the ground up, which is fine when you're like testing it out or when you need to like put some spice in the game. But to have a unit like that be around for like a year and a quarter, the entire lifetime of battlegrounds, that's just silly.
it's a long time.
Yeah. So why do you think taunt comps are the least, like the lowest win rate on HS replay? Like by far. Right now, like if you look at HS replay like comps, dragons are always at the top because you only ever go dragons if you look into a Caligos. So they've been at the top basically since dragons existed, and it's not really a balance problem. Menageries are always underrated, so menageries right now are kind of with everybody else, but it really means that menagerie is a really powerful comp right now. But taunts are really low, and that's not a comp that you like, you know, menagerie into. Like you have a failed comp, and so we're going to call it a taunt comp. That seems
No.
like there's some.
Oh, this is the even easier answer. I thought you would pick up on this. It's because if you are dying in the early game, the only thing you can go for is taunt comp.
I see.
So it's one of those things where like, yeah, you're already screwed, right? So it's an even more failed menagerie example of the failed menagerie,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like if you're getting just spanked in the early game, and whether it's by your own fault or not, the only thing that can help you stabilize is sort of this taunt comp, right? It's like, okay, I can't go, even if I get a brand, I'm screwed.
Right.
I got no hopes and dreams anymore. I'm just gonna like go taunt comp and hope for the best, and then they die. So like even if you have a good taunt comp, it's not winning anyways. And so many people, if they're getting hit in the early game, they're like, okay, time to go taunt
Time
comp,
to
and then
switch to a
they
taunt comp.
right, and then
Interesting.
they do, and then they
Okay.
die.
Okay. Because I've never
Yeah,
done that before, but I can see that line of thinking, and it play out. Like I'm also
yeah,
never dying in the beginning like that hard, so it's just
yeah.
it's
It's like that, the surgeon that has an extraordinarily high, like death rate in
yeah,
surgery, but then
yeah.
you find out it's like, oh, he's just operating on people who are
We're
like
likely to die.
likely to die anyways. It's
Okay.
kind of like
Okay,
that.
that
Yeah.
makes sense. That makes sense. Um, all right. Well, the other thing in BGs that I thought was really interesting is I looked at the leaderboards on BGs for the first time in a long time, in like months. And I noticed, one, that the top end hasn't moved that much. We're still at 14K, like, between 14K and 15K is the top end of BG's ratings. And I knew Merps was like top 25 months ago, and then he wasn't playing that much. He's still top 50. And then I talked to him today, and I was like, "So, how much have you been playing Battlegrounds?" And he said, "Not since 2020." So, Battlegrounds ratings have stabilized. Maybe not
Somewhat.
100%, but they're mostly stabilized. Like,
Yeah.
if we're talking 3 months go by, you don't touch MMR your ratings, and no one is zooming past you. Like you've fallen effectively 25 spots with 3 months of inactivity almost. Like that's crazy. And also the top end moved by maybe like 200 MMR in the span of 3 months, maybe 300, right? Like 100 a month. Like that is that is quite a big success, I think, for the BG's rating system. And it is something like back, I forget when, I think back when they were doing the resets, they Blizzard announced that they were doing something with the internal rating system to make things better, but would not tell anybody any details about what exactly is changing or even what effects that they intended it to have. Just like nothing, right? Now we are several months into that change, and I think it's safe to say that the top end of Battlegrounds in terms of the rating system has been vastly improved.
It's definitely gotten a lot better. I remember during the old system where I was playing a lot and it was hard to keep up. I was playing a lot, my win rate was good, but I had to play even more, um, like an extreme degree, a degree of like a pro streamer, right? In order to uh, like climb at all. And now I haven't played for more than 2 months, and I've gone from top 20 in NA down to top 50. But realistically, I should have gone down
You should no
much.
longer be in the top 200 by the old standard. You would have been out
Uh,
of the top 200 in like a month.
yes, I would have been out. So what does this say? I mean, first of all, they have done something fix the um, to fix the just massive inflation that was happening before. Now, there's still lots of problems, in my opinion, with the MMR system in general,
Mm-hmm.
but fixing this is a huge, huge kind of well, it was just really good, like and very very necessary, because what would have happened eventually if we didn't stop this at like the 15K? And I understand number one NA is reaching 16K, but if we didn't stop it, then what would have happened is that if you took someone who is very good and gave them a fresh account, it would take them months to get back to where their other account is, and that's a problem, right? It's not that like, oh, it should be like you should have to work to get to your true MMR, or we need to test you a lot. But if we know that someone is capable of getting to, let's say, 20K in this alternate universe, uh, and then if the inflation kept on going, how long would it have taken them to go from a brand spanking new account to 20K? Probably at least like 2 3 months of playing 10 hours every single day. um that's like, if we had continued down that path, that's just what would have happened, and that is insane. Yeah, you can't have that. Even now, I think it's too much. Even now,
It's definitely still too much even now.
it's definitely way too much right now. Like, and I there's no way to really test this unless Victor does, the madman does it again and takes another account from like fresh to match his other accounts. But if you just ask people who like play a lot, like we had Collins on, and I mean he agrees. Like as of right now, it would take definitely more than a month of like
Yeah.
nonstop playing, of like Twitch streamer levels of playing a month, basically to get to where you're supposed to get to on the same server. I'm not talking about like, oh, you're 14K on NA, then you get 14K on EU. Like it's different, right? It's there's like different sort of degrees of MMR there. But yeah, in order to get to the same on the same server, it takes forever. So a lot of problems, but they seemingly have solved this to some degree, and I am happy about that. And in fact, I argue there should be decay of some sorts as to punish me for not playing for 2 months, because that's also kind of ridiculous. Like I
Yeah.
feel bad. I'm taking up a spot. I'm sitting there. I'm not trying to protect anything here, but it's just one of those things where I don't want to play
Yeah.
serious. So I'm going to go on EU to just sort of mess around. And I don't want to tank my MMR because Blizzard has shown that for tournaments, they care about your MMR. So if you guys remember, like many months ago on EU, they were like, oh, the top 16 MMR players are invited to this tournament. So they obviously care about MMR to some extent. And now it's this situation where I kind of want to just like not care at all, but I can't because Blizzard has shown that they do tournaments through MMR, so I'm just stuck.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just gonna sit here and prevent other people, unlike gatekeeping people,
Yeah.
from getting into the top 50.
They'll I mean that's like look, the BG's rating system, I think this is a massive improvement and like you said, a necessary one. And it's still nowhere close to perfect. It still warps the game at the top. I don't know that they actually have any plans to fix that or that they even consider it as a problem. They've certainly never said that, they've never acknowledged that they consider it a problem. The warping effect that it has on the top, they've never even acknowledged it. Like that could just be like, well, what else do you expect us to do at the top, right? Like in the rating system. But this and the decay is probably coming up at some point. Like I would imagine that it will be implemented and it'll be like the next step of whenever they decide to mess with the ratings again. But I do feel like I'm happy that they finally did something about the ratings to make it kind of actually function at least. Still warping, but you're you're seeing like the best players up there that can dedicate like still a lot of time, but it's doable now, right? Like it had gotten to the point where it was not doable.
It gets to a point where people like you can think about catching up,
Yeah,
or like not losing progress.
yeah. And I think depending on, I don't know, because whenever they do the next ratings reset, I'm like, oh, I'll make a BG's push. But then I'm like, that's probably when Core Set's going to come out. And I'll probably want to play Arena more than BG's at that point, unless Quillbores are amazing, which I don't think they will be, just because they're Quillbores. I'm being speciesist. So, yeah, that's BG's. You got any last words on the current BG meta or ratings or anything?
No, I think at this point we just need something a little bit new, and I think for BGs in general, look, people are always going to complain about something. You're never going to get the pacing of BGs exactly right, and the, at the end of the day, though, I think people would prefer a quote like crazier meta. Like people would prefer a crazier meta than a meta like somewhat like this. I'm not saying exactly like this, right? Because it's not, it's fine and the taunt comps or whatever. Um, but I expect that we're gonna be seeing crazier metas just because I think Blizzard knows, like, at the end of the day, people like playing with sort of, crazy stuff. People like leveling. People like, big scaling, kind of like they like dragons. They like all of this other stuff. Taunt comps are kind of meh.
Yeah. I think with or without taunt comps in the meta, like it's not like the tickets were doing a lot of the crazy things. So when you took those
Sure.
out and then you took out like and you nerfed the top hero, that's mostly what you're like. I think the taunt comps are doing a small portion of the work just because I don't see a lot of them. Like even if they're powerful, people aren't using them.
Well, no, I'm saying the taunt comps are just making things boring.
Oh yeah, yeah, but like
That's what.
okay, so they make
Like,
things boring because they're taking the spots of potentially more exciting options, like right because they're being offered and they're like in the pool. Um, not that people are doing taunt comps on a huge scale. Like this is not the
yeah,
taunt comp meta, you know what I mean? Like this is the way it was like a demon meta and a murloc meta. Like this is or like this is taunt comps exist sort of. It's one of the even lesser favored of the comps in terms of people's what you see in the meta, but they are taking the spot of potentially a better, more interesting mechanic.
yep. Get rid of taunt comps and give us quill bores.
All right. So let's move on now to question from the goat. Question from the goat, brought to you by our patrons, is what kind of games have you been playing lately? We've both been playing a lot of random other games in this time, and so I feel like we'll just talk a little more about that. And also, Slissa just rated us and says, "Is this the Pokemon podcast?" So let's get
Uh,
back to our Pokemon Snap discussion for a little bit. What are you expecting? Like honestly, how much time are you expecting to put into Pokemon Snap?
it's not about the total amount of time. I think it's about your feelings going through it the first time. Especially every level, the first few times. I remember in the old, like the OG Pokemon Snap, when you went into the cave and the first time you found out, I think it was the electrode or something. When you like hit the electrode, it explodes
Mm-hmm.
and it shifts the path
Yep.
such that your car goes into like a
Mm-hmm.
different part of the cave, and you're like,
I
"Whoa!"
remember that.
That's the stuff that I'm really looking forward to. It's that sense of exploration. It's that sense of, the first few times that you play it, you're always discovering new things, and so of course those hours are going to be the most important, and then the hours afterwards where you're just spamming like balls and
To
really
get the
just like,
perfect picture by the definition of
yeah,
Nintendo,
by
who
the
has
definition of,
apparently no photography skills.
it's not about photography skills, it's about filling up the page, right? In this weird way and utilizing the hitboxes and everything. It's very, very strange. Now, those hours are very different because that's like min-maxing and really just call PETA because I don't know how many of those smoke bombs I tossed at Mew. There's this cute little mystic Pokemon that just wants to have fun and is leading me somewhere, and I'm gassing the shit out of it just so I can take the perfect picture and show it to the professor who supposedly cares about Pokemon, but it's like, here's, like, here's a 940, there's 1,000 max, go back and pelt the Mew more. So I'm looking forward to it mostly for the quality of the first, like, I'll say 10 hours I'm going to play on it. And then afterwards, the min maxing and everything, significantly less enjoyable. But I figure for the first 10 hours, it's going to be so good. And it's just a sense of exploration. And I want to see Pokemon like pop out. I want to see just a lot of these surprises that I experienced from the first Pokemon Snap.
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking forward to the surprises too. I know about 12 Pokemon after the original. So I feel like
Mm.
there's going to be some of these new things in this new one, and it's going to be a lot very surprising for me to see all these new Pokemon. I know the new Pokemons that I know are some of the starter Pokemon and some of the ones that have been in Smash Brothers. That's my world of new Pokemon that I have been exposed to.
Yeah, you don't know many of them.
No,
You do
very
not
little.
know so many of them. It's kind of
I bought Pokemon. What was it? It was before Sword and Shield. It was whichever one was on 3DS, and I just like couldn't get through like the first like 2 hours of it, and so I stopped. But that was a lot of random Pokemon there.
well,
That
Pokemon. Every Pokemon game, it's uh, it's really just a 20-hour tutorial. It's it's like a 20-hour tutorial that gets you to the end game that a lot of people don't even want to play
hmm
because the end game is competitive, right? That's competitive. That's like the real end game after a 20-hour tutorial. But a lot of people just want to play the 20-hour tutorial. But then, of course, some people hate the 20-hour tutorial because it's a 20-hour tutorial.
Yeah,
That's
I
kind of
normally don't mind a 20-hour tutorial, but it was just like it was a 20-hour tutorial in a game that I already pretty much knew how to play. That's the problem.
Mhm.
All right, so that's Pokemon. But what else have you been playing in the last little bit?
I have been playing. Oh God, I've been playing like a few things. Finished up Odyssey. That was
Hmm.
a lot of
Yeah, Merps, the
fun.
one holdout on Odyssey that didn't buy it immediately when it came out.
I forgot what was happening during that time, and I just kind of like stuff was happening, so I was like, oh, I'll play it, and it was always something I was going to play, and I played it, tons of fun. That's just game design gone right, where they take something and they throw out all reason and just say, okay, here's an experience, here's something that we have established before, we want to bring it back, and we want to change it, but every single step of the way, the game designers are like, how can we make this more fun? That's it. It's just like
Hmm.
it doesn't like logic doesn't matter. It's just about more fun and like how can we make the exploration more fun? How can we make this better and more enjoyable for the audience? And every step of the way, it's just like just pure enjoyment. So
I like the size of the game, not like the total length, but like each world. Like I think
each
that's
one
a
is
good size. It's not too huge. You're not just like running around. Like that's one of the best and the worst parts of Zelda, even before the latest one, where there's always this like gigantic world, and then I feel the urge to poke at every single corner that's possible, and that like gets in the way of my actual enjoyment of the game. Like in Mario, there's enough exploration and enough freedom and enough open world, but it's a very curated experience, and they bring it back, and they don't let you do random stuff for too long before you like find something, right? it
yeah.
feels it feels less like Fallout 3, which I think was the ultimate game of you walk in a direction for 15 minutes and find nothing often, and more like Fallout New Vegas, where if you walk in any direction for 2 minutes you'll find something. Like it's a desert, but you'll find something there.
Here's the thing I don't understand about game criticism. Like in recent years, especially, people are criticizing like anything that's not like, oh, every choice is available,
Mhm.
all open world. Like, that is the paragon of gaming, right? Like, uh, open world, all the choices,
Super
and it's
crafting.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's sort of like, wait, how do we get there, right? It's like containment. Like art should have taught you that containment, selective containment is very like deliberate selective containment, right? Is very artistic. Like that's very very artistic. And in fact, if you have everything available, that is like the opposite of art, right? Like that's exactly the opposite of art. Art
Mhm.
is like curation, it is like choosing, it is like selective placement of whatever your medium is. So, uh, that's why, like, when people are just like, oh well, they limit your choices here, or I, I think my favorite example of criticism was actually in I don't know why I'm remembering this, Final Fantasy 13, which I know a lot of
Oh
people hate.
yeah. Well, there were problems with that game.
There were problems. No, there were problems with it, but the main sort of like meme
Hmm.
criticism was like, "Oh, play hallway simulator." I was like, "These are pretty good hallways." I
Yeah.
was like, "Hey, these are pretty decent
It's
hallways."
like
Like,
if you made me a map instead of a hallway, I'd be doing the same thing, just walking more.
and they eventually opened it up as well. They were just like, "Hey, we want to show you this, right?" It's like we want you like we
Oh,
want you to experience the exact story that we want to tell.
yeah.
I'm like, I'm cool with that. Like, you want to tell the story, bring me along. Uh, with it. And so I think we're getting to a point where the criticism for a lot of these games is just like, okay, let's not always focus on open world and all of that stuff. And if you guys have listened for a while, you guys know that I never finished Breath of the Wild because
Yeah, and I
didn't like
actively hate Breath of the Wild.
I didn't like it. Now, look, I'm not going to say it's bad because obviously, like overwhelmingly, people love it and everything, and I can see why. I didn't like it because it's not a Zelda
Hmm.
game. It's not a Zelda game. It is an open world RPG game with Zelda IP. It is not a Zelda game, right?
Yep.
That's it. Like,
It,
and I wanted a Zelda game. It's for the same reason that I don't play a lot of open world kind of RPGs that have like puzzle elements to them, which is really what Breath of the Wild is. Um, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there's enough diversity in games that you can kind of get what you want these days from like no matter what kind of game preferences you're doing. That's my sweet spot. Like Mario Odyssey is really my sweet spot for how much exploration whatever I want. Final Fantasy 13 when they opened up the world, the game got so much worse because it
Mhm.
was like they were just not prepared to do that, and it felt like they kind of like felt like they had to, and once I opened up, I'm like, no, 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 give me back the corridors. Your corridors were not great, but they were at least like what you were doing. Now I don't know what you're doing anymore, but the game got a lot less fun.
Yeah.
Um, like it felt like I was playing a MMO without any other people, like an abandoned MMO with
Yeah.
a crap balance system, and like the developers had abandoned it and all the players had abandoned it. I was like, what am I doing? Um,
Look, this is like the boomer in me that is saying like if I'm playing Zelda, I just want my Zelda game. The best Zelda game, like it, or maybe not best, the quintessential Zelda game in my mind is The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds.
yep.
That is
100% with you.
and look, like the old Zelda games, I enjoy all of them. Ocarina of Time like it changed the way I think about video games. But The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds is a game that it came out like fairly recently. I mean,
Like
not
5 years ago or something.
7 years ago. Okay,
Yeah,
it came out
okay.
7 years ago, so it's not like old. It came out 7 years ago, and it combined the old with the new perfectly, and it just gave this like such a good Zelda experience, I
Mm-hmm.
think, and that's kind of just what I wanted. Now, once again, Breath of the Wild, critically acclaimed, super duper good. It just wasn't for me because I didn't get that Zelda feel from it. Like, yeah, you had all of the Zelda IP in there, um, but it just didn't feel like a Zelda game, so I didn't enjoy it.
Mm. All right. So I want to give a shout out to Ridiculous Hat and his Hades podcast. He makes Hearthstone podcast as well. You probably know who he is. But if you don't, it's a Hearthstone player, longtime Hearthstone vet, podcaster, and he's on Coin Concede now for Hearthstone. But he does a Hades podcast called Hidden Aspects, and I was on it for the last week, and it was a really great time. If you are into Hades at all, or have played the game, or just want to hear me talk about Hades for like with Hat for like an hour and a half, that's it's a good thing to check out. I really had a lot of fun, so wanted to give a shout out to the Hidden Aspects podcast. And if you're into Hades, he does like interviews with like voice actresses and people who are way better at the game than me, obviously. Speedrunners, like just regular people, other Hearthstone players, all sorts of stuff. But in addition to Hades, I've been on a roll with like random like games that I've been kind of clearing. I did Into the Breach, spent like a few days on Into the Breach, killed that game. Like that's a game where I thought I'd be good at it because it's all about positioning, and I'm the king of positioning when it is all about positioning. Like that's how you know I'm actually amazing at positioning. Is when I take Into the Breach, beat the entire game on my second try, turn it on hard, and then beat it on my first try on hard all 4 islands. Why? Because it's a game almost entirely built upon positioning, and they give you perfect information almost. So you know where the enemies are going, you know what the enemies are about to hit, and you are just kind of like, it's all random, but you're just kind of solving a puzzle every step of the way. And you're positioning a limited number of units against a limited number of other people's units, right? And I just killed that game. I killed it so hard that it wasn't even like it was fun to play. It's $15, right? So whatever. I spent like 25, 30 hours on it. I'm done with the game. I obviously didn't do everything, but in that time I've beaten it with every single like comp and then on hard. But it was a good experience. It's interesting to figure out a lot of the stuff. So if you're into games that involve a lot of positioning, almost entirely positioning, like I feel like positioning is really over 50% of the skill in that game. And turn planning. You have to plan up to 4 turns ahead. Probably not really that much, but you have to plan more than 1 turn ahead to be actually good at the game. That's a game I definitely recommend. It's from the creators of FTL, but it's not as good as FTL. In case people are having raised expectations, it's not that good of a game, but it's a good game. And what else have I played? I just started Catherine. I'm in kind of like a puzzle like mood. And that game's kicking my ass because every single freaking level, like it took me, I don't know how long, like I don't know other people's experiences with Catherine, but you basically start off in a puzzle, and they don't really give you much direction in the puzzle, and it's timed, and like you just die. There's like something chasing you, and you just like die if the thing that chases you catches you. I think I died 50 times before I reached the end of the first level, which is like in theory like a 30-second level or something. That's a tutorial. But the fact that it was timed totally changed everything. And they really did not explain the mechanics very well, and the controls are a little wonky. But I've gotten a little bit better of a hang of it now, but it's still really hard for me. Like I started the game on normal mode, and it's kicking my ass right now. Also, I cannot believe they allow that game on Nintendo Switch. This is like a new Nintendo philosophy where everything goes. Like that is a game where it's just like I don't know if people actually get naked, but they're basically half naked for the entire game, and the F-bomb is dropped in like every other dialogue for no reason.
Yep.
Yeah. So those are the 2 games I played. I played I also went through the Limbo, which I've owned for a long time. Yeah, yeah, and I just never played it, but I've owned it for a long time. And finally, me and Brand New sat down and we played through it. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Have you played Inside?
I have not. I own that as well. I bought it in some like bundle when it was like on sale for like 80% off or something. I will play that at some point, but
That's like Limbo is good, right? Like quite good actually, and uh, the spider was just done so well. Like I still remember the spider from Limbo.
yeah,
They did that segment very very well. But Inside is just a complete masterpiece. Everything they learned by making Limbo, they applied to Inside, and it's so good.
okay.
And the world building that they do, they ramp it up like a bajillion times Inside. So you guys are gonna have a ton of fun playing that one.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it then. I had dropped it because I was like, I don't really want to do another like similar kind of updated game. I didn't realize it was like so transformatively different.
It's transformatively different. Like the play, the play style is the same, right? It's
Right,
like
right.
puzzles within rooms, like kind of very contained puzzles. But the world is very different. Like for example, in Limbo, it was about this sort of I mean, it was like a limbo kind of dreamlike
Mm-hmm.
state, right? And inside, it takes you to like a full gambit. Like you're exploring this kind of dystopian world, and they show you like many different segments from it. And if you pay attention, like it's telling you the story, and then afterwards you can watch all of the YouTube explanations, and it's like, oh, if you pause it at this point of the game, you'll see in the background there's this thing, and that relates to this other thing, and then of course, like they explain the entire thing, but
Interesting.
much more complete game.
Cool. So yeah, so that's what I've been doing. I also finished Mario 3D World. Go! If you guys haven't gotten that on the Switch, because I assume nobody owns a Wii U and nobody's ever played this game, it's a solid Mario game. It's not Odyssey, but it gets the job done. I enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to enjoy it, and the difficulty does ramp up after the first few worlds, and the very last world is I can't beat it. But then again, I didn't beat the moon level, like the final whatever level in Mario Odyssey either. Because my platforming skills aren't that good.
All right, we talked about other games for a long time now.
Yeah. Let's end the podcast. We'll be back next week, and yeah. Until then, see you guys on the next Lightforge. Until then, this is Adwicta.
See you guys.